So the next section we're looking at is the success criteria, which is, so I've given you a sheet of this is how I'm marking it. But a lot of you might say, well, what do I do to get those marks? Well, how do I know what to do? The success criteria is the steps that help you create your assignment. It is also let you know what am I looking for as a teacher? Like what are the things I want to see in order to make sure you do this correctly, right? This is just before um, sorry, I got a little distracted there. So that's the goal of what's going to happen, right? So if you look at LFA number one, it repeats the question again. The goal is what you need to do to complete the assignment, and the goal is to explain the different categories of law in a pamphlet format to provide examples of different categories of law. So while I've said pamphlet, if you find doing a pamphlet difficult and rather do it as a PowerPoint or slides, that's fine too. I just need to see sort of a visual um, uh, representation and information on each of those categories. So step one is determine the categories of law. Use textbook to look up the categories of law. So the handle I've given you, you can look at that. I can also, if you need to, I can, I'm going to probably upload an attachment or a file on YouTube as a link. So I have to sort of figure that out to make sure you have that aspect. Okay? So once you look at the categories of law, you sort of define them all. A quick hint, not you can go through the textbook and read all the paragraphs. You probably should because it's good information. But if you want to know what each one of those different types of categories are, on the site it has definitions. Now, the definitions are using more sophisticated language. I want you to use, in your definitions, I want you to sort of use easy to understand language so people will see it and know what it is. Okay. That's step one. Step two, yeah, define each term in your own words. Connect examples from each definition. So after you've got the terms from your textbook and you know what they are, put in your own words and then provide an example of it, right? So if someone said criminal law is laws that deal with the individual in the state, for example, has someone speeding in a car and gets pulled over by the police and is charged with what's it? Speeding on a local street, right? That's an example of criminal law that he's committed a crime, he's violated, and to do something, and he gets charged with it. So you have to think about each of those specific types of law and examples of them in our world. Step three is the actual planning of your outline. So the front of the outline pamphlet is the Emily Pell page. I'll talk about that later. I'm not going to do that today. I'll probably do a little lesson about what it looks like tomorrow. There's a lot to sort of for you guys to focus on. The next fold or next part of your pamphlet would have the master categories law diagram, which means you have the sort of same chart diagram it's put on page 54, would have all the laws and how they interconnect to each other. Then fold three, which is like a little page, it's international law and domestic law. Fold four, you have procedural law and substantive law. Fold five will be public law and have all the things underneath it, which is constitutional, administrative, and criminal. Private law, part one, is tort, contract, and family. And private law, part two, is wills and estates, property, and employment. I broke those into two different parts because civil law has lots of categories, and it's not fair to do it all in one shot. You can include some pictures of representations of that law or of that situation or that sister and sister. It's a good idea. But the idea is to put this information on a pamphlet. Again, it's very brief information, not long, drawn-out essays. So it's almost like a definition and an example. A definition and an example. It's something that people can look at and learn more about the categories of law. It's done in folds because if you use Publisher, when you create a brochure, it's going to give you certain sets of folds, and it'll show you where you can put work in or words in and where you can't put words in. If, again, you find this difficult and think, I'd rather just do it as a PowerPoint wallet, do it that way, the same rules apply that the folds become pages on your for PowerPoint. I think that's it for me. Does anyone have any questions about what they need to do?
So if we do it on PowerPoint, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you can do it on PowerPoint. I'll cross the line and say this is PowerPoint in a pamphlet. Doesn't really matter. I just want the information. And I know for some people, or just sometimes the computer program, like I've done pamphlets on this, but sometimes it gets very wonky and it doesn't create the number of folds that you need. So if it's easier, if you find it just easier to do as a PowerPoint, do it that way. I just want the information, right? Anything else? How about anyone on Zoom that's not here? The Zoom away kids. I'm going to stop this right now, the recording.